I'd like to introduce, I'm proud to introduce, Congressman Bill Foster.
Thank you all. Well, first off, I have a problem with that name. You know, one of our top targets for flipping the House of Representatives is actually a woman named Young Kim, who won a seat that a Republican never should have won down by Irvine, California. Okay, so when she pollutes your Google News alerts, it's all Bill. We know the difference. Well, all right, well, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Congressman George Santos. But seriously, you know, it requires a sense of humor to survive the House of Representatives at all right now. Because, well, for a bunch of reasons. I mean, first off, they're attaching everything that moves. They're attaching anti-choice stuff. They're attaching, you just name it. And so, you know, one of my colleagues said, well, you know, this job right now is to just, you wake up in the morning, you look at your email, and you see what you're going to vote against today. And that's pretty much the way it is. You know, for 3 weeks it was just watching the Republican caucus tear themselves apart, failing to elect a speaker. And it says a lot that the one they've chosen, just, you know, the more you look at his positions on things, the more horrified you are. But I think it's one of these situations, like, you know, if you ever wondered, you know, how did they ever elect Dennis Hastert? Remember Dennis Hastert? Right? And the answer is that they were just desperately going through trying to find someone that didn't have known obvious flaws. Okay? And so, known obvious flaws. And so this guy had not many known obvious flaws that have been kind of more and more well-known since people have actually looked at what he's doing. You know, and it is a time, you know, what's happening in the Mideast is just sort of tearing, you know, our hearts apart as human beings. You know, there's, and when people ask me what are my thoughts on this, I tell you, read President Obama's, he has some really good medium posts that he did. And, you know, he wrestled with all of these issues for the 8 years that he was president. He was not exactly a fan of Bibi Netanyahu, and crossed swords with him many times. But you know, he understands that you have to defend a democracy when it defends itself. But, you know, the necessity of obeying the laws of war is absolute, but the laws of war themselves are pretty murky, I have to say. And so just everything that comes back and forth on that is, you know, makes it tough. But one of the things that I sort of grasp onto is that I go to a lot of events out in the collar counties with young kids who are very, very diverse. Many of them, you know, Hindu, Muslim, just you name it, Jewish. And the kids get along much better than the parents do. Yes, they do. You know, and that is. When I went to high school, you know, the schools were nominally desegregated, but the cafeteria tables were not. All right, and you probably know what I mean by that. But it's not like that. When I visit, at least the high schools out in the 11th district, you know, it just looks like someone took a bunch of cards and threw them up in the air and they landed randomly, and that is really neat to see. And you know, what's happening in the Mideast today is causing some tension even among young kids. And it's good that they're thinking about it and arguing about it, frankly, because if they weren't, there would be something wrong. But they're still, you know, it's not their lives to just, you know, reinvigorate these tribal hatreds and amplify them. And so that, like I say, that's what I sort of cling to in this crazy world, because that has to, if that isn't happening, then we're all in real trouble. You know, I remember, you know, I'd always talk to my kids when I was putting them to sleep, And they'd ask me questions, they'd save questions trying to get me to talk for the longest period. And so we'd talk about, well, you know, why didn't you do this when you were young? I'm talking about like drugs, okay, you know, they hear about like kids having drugs and, you know, but you took all these drugs because you grew up in the 60s, right? And, you know, the only way the world gets better is if every generation behaves better than the previous generation, okay? And, you know, that sort of seems to, that's what has to happen. And I am really impressed by the young kids. And especially those that are Democrats. Which is the most fun. And it's fun to see, there's this wonderful thing that we did with the registering early and being able to vote when you're 17, as long as you're 18. That gets kids really excited. And it means they can do something while they're still in their senior year before they, so it actually really, that was, I think, going to have benefits that will last generations. And so that was, I didn't appreciate it until I started talking with kids and saying, well, yeah, well, actually one of the kids I met with just, you know, down at the Will County Diwali Festival with this evening you're competing with the Democratic Women of Will County Diwali Festival, okay, which is a great organization. Anyway, but one of the kids there, I told they would get voted, and it was just so, they're watching her eyes light up. Oh, this is, anyway, I spend a lot of time on airplanes, and you know, there was a while when I would read a lot, and now I tend to look out the window more and think about, you know, looking at the flyover country that we represent, and just thinking of, you know, what it means to be an elected representative. And you'll never get a chance to say hi to the people that you most, you know, the 750,000 people I represented. It's even harder for me because of this crazy new district.
Yeah.
You know, when people ask me, Bill, where's your new district? I say, well, it's got pieces of 8 counties in, but basically, you get off the plane in O'Hare, you drive for 45 minutes in any direction, and you're either in my district or you're in Lake Michigan. That's pretty much it. So you can look at the map. But you know, when I think about the 15 years I've been in this business, that how important it was, well, first off, the incredible progress the Democratic Party's made, and then how important women have been to that.
Yes.
My driving star in all of this was Melissa Dean. Now remember Melissa Dean?
Oh, I remember
She was
Melissa.
the first one that proved you could win, a Democrat could win one of these famously Republican Collier County seats. You know, and when I entered Congress, I said, okay, well, you know, I came in a special election, and if you come in on a special election and you've never even been in the state legislature before, you say, what is this, you know? And they basically say, okay, go raise your hand, put your hand on the Constitution in my case, and get sworn in, okay, here's your voting card, next vote's in 15 minutes. And you don't have any staff, you have no idea, you know, what it is. And so I said, Melissa, and then she said, just follow me. And it was great. And she was such a high quality member who was, you know, she ran basically over choice. You know, if you ask her what it is and she took her 2 tries to do it. And it's easy to think that, you know, the tide only sweeps one way, but it doesn't. You know, I remember talking to Melissa Dean 3 years later. We met on election day at Elgin Community College, and we looked at each other and said, I have a bad feeling about this. It was the 2010 Tea Party wave. And we sort of both knew that it was going to be tough, and she ended up losing by 300 votes, and I lost by a little bit more. You know, in the last election, we came very, very close to losing Lauren Underwood. You know, everyone thought, oh boy, she's transformed. No, you know, it is yeah, those of you who come from McHenry County know that the transformation is yet to be completed in McHenry County. But it's doing. So those are the 2, actually no, that's not quite true. It's women and it's the unions.
Thank
that
you.
have been really there's this whole narrative that, you know, the Rounders of the world believe in, that, you know, unions have wrecked the economy of Illinois and blah, 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 you've heard all that. But, you know, I don't think you can convince Belvedere, Illinois, that the unions have wrecked Belvedere, Illinois, because they were saved. And it was so thrilling. Well, first off, it is, you know, I don't know how many Zooms we had with the governor and his team trying to convince Stellantis to provide a future for that, you know, that city, right? Because, you know, the Belvedere Assembly Plan is pretty much the heart and soul of Belvedere. And without that, you know, it was shut down in February, and people widely believed that they were going to move all the production line to Mexico. And it didn't happen because, well, the President Biden personally interceded, because the governor and I personally, you know, let the president know what we felt, and the unions. The single biggest factor was the fact that UAW locals from all over the country said, we want Belvedere back. And they didn't have to do that. You know, it wasn't their dog in the fight. But you know, I remember when I went to the rally down in the Southside Ford plant, and there were a lot of the members there were wearing red shirts that said, "We are all Belvedere." And that is union solidarity. And that is so important to, you know, to the success of the Democratic Party and to the success of the middle class. And so it's really, you know, I found it, two things that I just really, women and the labor movement. That is what made it possible to happy to answer questions about anything. Or just go? Okay. Well, the problem is I have to filibuster for Delia, you know. And so I thought I had some license to speak a little longer. But by the way, she is great. It's wonderful. She is a ball of fire.